Nick, it is an understatement to say that it is an ever-changing collegiate athletic landscape. And we'll just focus in on one sport because if you go collegiate athletics as a whole, it's a whole different thing.
Right.
Like soccer, potentially men's soccer breaking away into like a 32 team league and running stuff with the United States Soccer League and doing a year round season. Like there are so many things you can get into with some of these other sports, but for football specifically, and some of these do involve a number of other sports and kind of NIL across the board. I'm going to give you a few of the things being worked on right now. In New York, there is legislation to make it so that any student athlete who receives aid, which is in return for them playing, which would be, an athletic scholarship,
right,
they are considered an employee. That's legislation being worked on right now. Louisiana is working on legislation, the same as Georgia, Alabama, and Illinois, for bills to exempt college athlete name, image, likeness compensation from state income tax. Oregon has an NIL bill that has been filed that would prohibit the NCAA or any other organization from requiring college athletes to disclose their NIL agreements if those agreements have non-disclosure or confidentiality provisions. We haven't even gotten to the actual House settlement.
No.
But there are some of these that aren't really covered. They actually go against what that House settlement is. I'm just going to ask you a big question right now. Are we going in the right direction with collegiate athletics?
Personally, for me, I don't think we are. But the problem with what I just said there is, what am I going to do to slow it down? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing is, I feel like once these things get enough momentum, it's the old toothpaste out of the tube where we can't put it back in. It's just how do we maintain the current status quo of what it currently is, or how do we put guardrails so it doesn't get completely out of control? And I think there have been so many factors where, I shouldn't say we, but the NCAA allowed this to take place without really doing anything concrete, to where everything was loosely governed. When it comes to NIL, this better not be any shady business or else what? Well, we don't really know yet, but we'll do something about it. We just don't know. But beware, because we're watching. No one took that serious, and they won't take that serious. The one thing you brought up that is interesting to me when it comes to the absolute carousel in college football when it comes to the transfer portal, in the Wild West, if you will, is if all of a sudden your scholarship is considered employment, wouldn't there be some type of contracts involved in that too? Wouldn't there be some type of employment contract involved where you can only leave if X happens or Y happens? I am a fan of that type of language in some shape or form. Now, does it need to be attached to the scholarship itself, or is this something that needs to be more of the revenue share? I don't know. I don't know what the best solution from that standpoint. I've thought, as this thing has completely just spiraled out of control when it comes to you're here one year, gone the next, and you have some student athletes that attend 4 or 5 different schools during their collegiate career, that to me is awful. That to me needs to stop. That to me needs some type of deep dive on what you can legally do. And I think you got to involve all parties. What you can do for the sake of the student athlete, but also for the institution itself. What can you do to make sure that when you have that commitment, and now that commitment comes with dollars, not only just scholarship dollars, but dollars on top of that, that you can get that commitment for at least a handful of years. I'm not going to cue the violin for head coaches, especially in the sport of football, given the money that they're making, but it makes their job significantly tougher when the pressure that you have is to recruit the best football team you can year in and year out. And then the pressure that comes with that, the hours that comes with that, the amount of time that you're away from your family that comes with that. And then, oh yeah, by the way, that 105-man roster that you currently have too, you got to re-recruit them too, because they could leave at the drop of a hat. And there is nothing anybody can do about it. Nobody can stop that. To me, there needs to be some type of, if you commit to us, if you're a quote employee, like one legislation once, I would think if you're an employee, that would keep you at least there if you're going to embrace all the things that come with it. The free education, the name, image, likeness opportunity, which in football will always be there, and then the revenue share on top of that. If you're going to get all these things, and the student athlete that has more leverage than they've ever had, at the very least, we can give the smallest amount of leverage back to the institution that if you commit to us, we can expect you to be here for at least 2 to 3 years. Unless something catastrophic happens where it's like, yeah, okay, it's probably okay for you to transfer.
Yeah, there's going to be provisions in these.
Yes.
I mean, we're heading towards contracts. I don't think that's any breaking news. We're heading towards contracts at the very least in football and basketball. And because when you look at the way revenue sharing is going to be utilized, the vast majority of it is going to football and basketball. We have yet to see what it's going to look like split up here at Nebraska. But when it comes to some of these places, Georgia, we just got that actually out just a couple of days ago. $13.5 million for football, $2.7 million for men's basketball, $900,000 for women's basketball is the way it's going to shake out initially. But it's going to be about 80%, 75 to 80% of the money is going to go to football.
Right.
And then basketball is really your other moneymaker for most schools. So what, 10 to 15% there? You're down to 5% or less for everything else. So it's going to be football and men's basketball, realistically, is where that revenue share is going to go. And then depending on your school.
Yeah.
Penn State and Iowa, you're probably going to want to throw some money towards wrestling.
Yep.
Nebraska, but it's going to be also interesting with Penn State because they've got a good volleyball program. But places like Nebraska, maybe Wisconsin, you're going to throw some money towards volleyball too.
Yeah. SEC, ACC baseball for sure.
Yeah. So you're going to see a lot of that. But when you talk about what head coaches are dealing with now for college football, that's why you're seeing staffs as big as they are.
Yep.
That's why you're seeing them hire, like in Lincoln, you have an associate head coach, and just announced last night or reported last night, you have a general manager. What did you see when North Carolina went through their coaching change? Well, it's a pro style staff. They've got a general manager to handle a lot of the stuff under the head coach. The head coach at this point is essentially the general manager and just kind of like delegating everything down. Everyone's got all of their different duties. The staffs are so large. That's where it is right now. And I just want us to skip the part that we're in and get to whatever that end game is, because it's going to be contracts. And when you get to the contracts, there's going to be collective bargaining. You're going to have to figure out how to do that with thousands of athletes, which is the tough part. That's, I think, what has been holding up a lot of this. But you're going to have to get to that part where you have the contracts, and what does that contract come with for the revenue sharing? Because you're only going to have so much money. Is that going to be if you come in as a freshman, we'll give you $150,000 of the rev share, and you can still have NIL on top of it, but then it'll escalate in year 2 to $200,000 in year 3. We'll go to 4, and if you're still here in year 4, we'll go up to $500,000. Like you really start to split up where some of the things are, and you can't do that for every single athlete. But there's going to have to be provisions. There's going to have to be contracts. I want us to skip the part to where we get to that. As a whole now, with collegiate athletics, because we saw the way the college football playoff played out, and then it became big news here a week ago, and it got brought up again this week because of Matt Rule being on a national podcast. He talked about why would you ever, if you're in the Big Ten, why would you ever play a Power 4 school in the non-conference? This comes up because Nebraska canceled the contract with Tennessee, asked to reschedule. This had been something that had been worked on since mid-2000s tried to get played in the mid 2010s, got pushed back because Tennessee wanted to play at Bristol. Cool. And then you get to now, and Nebraska is going to have Memorial Stadium renovations. It becomes a financial thing. Let me start with this. I get all of that. I also get that the side effect is you get an easier game. Absolutely understand that. I get looking at what the college football playoff has become, in where get through your league and do whatever you have to do in the non-con, but get through your league. Don't even worry about the strength of schedule, and you're fine. The thing that I don't get, Nick, is this from Husker fans, where it's, just win those games. I don't care who the teams are in the non-conference. I took that as being exceptionally soft in the response a week ago, in just go put a bunch of MAC teams and Sun Belt teams and whoever. For us as fans, we don't necessarily have to care about the financial part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously that's going to come up with how good of a team you can put out there, how well the university is doing for a place that runs everything in the black. I thought it was an exceptionally soft response from not every fan, but a lot of people that I saw. But on the side of understanding why Matt Rule is doing this, why Nebraska is doing this, why this benefits the program, the team specifically for these next couple of years, and building things forward, I get all of that from a financial standpoint. As a college football fan, I like to see brands go against brands, and that's one that I was disappointed we're not going to get.
I was too, and not even necessarily for the fact that it would be missing out on an opportunity to see Tennessee and Lincoln. I think it's more of an opportunity of going out to Knoxville and Neyland Stadium and seeing Nebraska playing on the road in one of the better college football venues. So as traditionalists, you miss out on that opportunity. And this is that word right there, traditional, is something of the past.
It's changing.
It really is. And I remember Trev saying this when it came to all the things that were happening in college athletics with NIL, when Trev said, we got to somehow, some way get comfortable in being uncomfortable. And I think this is a great example of that, where I said just a couple of days ago, before I heard Matt Rule say this, that I wasn't overly concerned about the Tennessee series being dropped. And I thought what Troy Dannon brought up from the complications of the stadium and the revenue and the importance now of the revenue more than anything. And even a year where you might take a slight step back with your revenue stream, but you hope to make up for it. I don't think athletic directors can necessarily even afford that, because this is the end game right now, is putting as much money into your athletic department that you possibly can, because you've got to pay the student athletes. You got to be able, if the NIL becomes in-house, you got to be able to manage donations on top of the revenue stream, so you can make sure that you are healthy in every way possible of evaluating, identifying, and getting student athletes over to your school, so you can put out the product that the fans are going to continue to go to the stadium and sell out the stadiums, are going to continue to travel, buy the merchandise, all of the things that you want, and that you can put on that winning product. It is all about the money, more so than it ever has been, and it's going to impact scheduling. But I still said this, where, okay, I understand they don't want to sacrifice a potential loss in money with reduced seats for that game. And they're going to, they want to have another home game and be able to get that money in. Okay, that makes sense to me. But I don't think this program and other programs will all of a sudden just go a decade of scheduling without at least a Power 4 team on their schedule. And then I hear Matt Rule say that, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I was wrong. I just assumed that, yeah, this is just because of a money thing. But once we get the stadium where we want it to be, we're going to have a Tennessee type team, or we're going to have a Kansas State, or we're going to have a team that you recognize from a Power 4 conference, and we'll have a home and home. You can go there and they'll come here and it'll be great. It may not happen as much as it did in the past, but it'll happen every once in a while. It's the FCS thing. It's not something you're going to see every year. And then you hear the way Matt Rule talked about it. And the reason I bring that up, I'm not saying I completely disagree with what he's saying. The coaching staffs right now and the athletic directors right now in the Power 4 conferences, they are taking their cues from Tony Petitti, from Greg Sankey,
Mhm.
and even the College Football Playoff Committee. And until there's a heavy emphasis on, we're going to ding you for your non-conference, or we're not going to put as much emphasis on the type of conference you're in and the type of schedule that you will have to play for a 9 or 10 game schedule, then let's go ahead and say those 2 non-conference games or 3 non-conference games that you're going to play, do whatever you want, because bottom line, you need to win those games. We don't care if you schedule a Power 4 or if you schedule an FCS. That's on you, however you want to decide, but we're not going to ding you for that. And our objectives as a conference is, because remember, there was that conversation that took place of maybe forcing your schools not to play FCS opponents. And I know there was even some athletic directors saying, okay, we're going to make that decision going forward that we're not going to play any FCS opponents. Well, all of a sudden we've gone completely the opposite on that, where it's like, it might behoove you to play an FCS opponent here or there, or at least a MAC team or a group of 5, because we need you and the playoff committee to really emphasize what you're doing in the conference slate of it. And so they're getting their cues from them. And think about it from this standpoint. Matt Rule, his job is to win football games. Yeah. His job is not to make us as fans happy about the games that we're going to see every year at Memorial Stadium. Until he's told by the conference commissioner and then by his boss, Troy Dannon, yeah, we got to do away with this. We got to schedule a little tougher because it's coming down from the top that this is what we need to do. Then Matt Rule will do that. Mm-hmm. Just like any other coach, their job is to win football games. And as long as there's no consequences and repercussions, that if you beat a Northern Iowa as opposed to a Vanderbilt, why would you want to bring Auburn in here? Why would you want to bring Tennessee? If you feel more confident, not only that you're going to get the payday, you got to pay the FCS teams a little bit too, but that you're going to get that win, it's going to be a lot less challenging than the Power 4 or the Power 4 teams that you could possibly be bringing in. I understand it from a competition standpoint. That's his job. His job is to find ways to win football games, because you already know what you're up against in the conference. And the SEC teams, they know what they're up against in conference play. Big 12, they know what they're up against in conference play. So I think that this is going to continue to happen. And maybe if you're a fan of FCS football, maybe this gives you another shot of life right now, because at one point, I thought FCS football was really going to struggle when it came to getting those paydays and playing power conference teams. Now I feel like there's a resurgence, and I think Matt Rule is not the only coach that said what he said, or is at least thinking what Matt Rule said when it comes to why the hell would we schedule them when we need to win football games. And the College Football Playoff Committee saying, you stack wins and take care of business in conference play, you're good, you're in.
I'm curious if that'll change when there's expansion, when it goes from 12 to 16, and you get the Big Ten and the SEC both get 4 automatic qualifiers, and it's based on your conference standing. So at that point, your 3 games of non-conference don't matter at all.
Yep.
Unless you are trying to get that wild card, unless you're trying to get one of those extra bids. So at that point, it might behoove you to have a Tennessee or an Oklahoma State or a Cincinnati on your tiebreaker. Schedule. Yeah, to try to get to where, no, we have this one up. We finished 5th in the Big Ten Conference, but we've got this one up on that league.
Yep.
So they shouldn't get another bid. We should get that over them. I'm curious if that'll change. You talk about Matt Rule, and I'm sure there are a lot of other coaches that have been thinking what he's thinking, but he's the one saying it. Now, the other day when he was talking on the triple option podcast, he's specifically talking to Urban Meyer.
Right.
He says, if we're being completely honest, I'm at a point in my life where in my 4th job and after getting fired in the NFL, I kind of say what I feel nowadays, and I could care less. First of all, he meant I could not care less. But that aside, is there a coach or anyone in collegiate athletics that is more self-aware right now of their situation, their league situation, and college football situation than Matt Rule? You had Big Ten media days last summer where he said the Big Ten coast to coast should get 4 in the playoff.
And he got crap for it.
And what happened? Got 4 in the playoff.
Yep.
Had the national champion who didn't even play for the Big Ten title. they call off the spring game. And there's going to be a spring event, but call off the spring game. Why? Well, we don't want our players being home shopping networked out on the Big Ten network ahead of a transfer portal. And also you're dealing with roster limitations and where all those things are. He got crap for it. He got dinged from everyone nationally. Well, what does everyone else do? Mm-hmm. Texas cancels, USC cancels, all these other schools, they follow suit. What happens now a week ago? They call off the Tennessee game. The why? For the athletic director, it's financial.
Yep.
For the college football coach, it's why the hell would we play that game?
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
He gets dinged for it.
Yep.
Not just nationally, but locally. I didn't like it because I like to see brands. But for him as a coach, like you said, his job is not to care about what the brand is that's coming in here. His job is to win friggin' football games. He got dinged for it. But guess what? He's right again. Every step of the way, Matt Rule has been right. Incredibly self-aware.
I think you bring up a great point. I can't think of a coach who is more self-aware of everything that is going on in college football and given his current situation than Matt Rule.
And vocal about it too. Not
absolutely
just saying it to his people in the room. He's saying it out loud.
And I don't know about you, Caleb. I appreciate that transparency. Mm-hmm. And again, this is where I go to the traditional thinker when it comes to not only college football, but especially Nebraska football, where it's so different because you're told to embrace all of the traditions that come with Nebraska football, from the sellout streak to the spring game to bringing in a marquee opponent every now and then. But you cannot be mad at Matt Rule for this. And this is the reason why. All of these decisions are dictated because of where college football is right now, because we can't have it both ways where, hey, you know what? We want the spring game. We want to see those guys competing in everything. Okay, well, then what if two of your key players all of a sudden hit the transfer portal because someone liked what they saw in the spring game, and now you are less effective in having an opportunity to win football games? Wouldn't we, at the end of the day, for every Nebraska fan, whether you're an old school fan or you're new to it, wouldn't at the end of the day, you much prefer what is going to help this team win now? Then give me that. If you think spring game being canceled and just doing some type of spring event can help us, fine. If you think canceling Tennessee is going to help us and we get more wins and we have a better shot at getting to the college football playoff, fine. Just do what you can that is going to win football games now. And I know it may not seem like it, even coming off of a 7-win, a 6-win regular season, 7-win after the bowl game. But these decisions are being made because this is what you have to do in college football to maintain roster integrity, to be able to identify talent, to be able to find talent in other places and bring it in, that money, and being able to protect your players from the outside world of getting a good scouting report on them so they can make a run at them. All of these things, which are nothing we're used to seeing, is the current state of college football. I go back to what we said earlier, being comfortable, uncomfortable. Getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. You're going to have to just continue to do that. And I don't like to do this where, hey, fan, this is what you should think. I'm telling you exactly how you should think. But if you're against all this stuff that's happening, A, it's not going away anytime soon. And B, if I were to tell you these decisions are being made because this, in the long run, is going to help Nebraska win, these decisions are going to help Nebraska win compared to the old model, wouldn't you accept that? I just feel like people need to be open-minded about the end game and the why collectively, because like you said, Caleb, just listen, lend Matt Rule your ear because he's telling you everything you need to know on why this is happening.
Since he first stepped foot in the Hawks Center and preached at his introductory press conference, he's been right. He's been right from day one. And now he's gone through. Obviously, he's updated his coaching staff. A few of those guys actually went and talked their introductory press conferences yesterday. We've got all of those at huskermax.com. There will be 3 more talking next week. We will have all of that coverage at huskermax.com. And then we will get into a pre-spring presser in just a couple of weeks with Matt Rule. So keep an eye out for that coming as well.